Hello and welcome to the Gray Debate. We are here today with Miss Donna McLaughlin, the Sterile Processing Manager for Covenant Health in Knoxville, and of course, my friend and colleague, Jameed Billingsley. How's everybody?
Hey, Angie.
Hey.
I am fired up today.
Yes.
We have to stop alcohol abuse in sterile processing.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And not that alcohol abuse, not that one, but really, honestly, our use of alcohol. So, Donna, what do you think? We were having a little conversation. Tell us what you think about the alcohol use.
Yes.
I think it's overused because it's a lack of knowledge of how to use it. You know, a lot of people just think that it's one of those catch-alls that you can wipe something down with it and everything's great. Even to the point of using it on instruments because it's supposed to be a disinfectant. So.
And like you said, from the knowledge perspective, we know alcohol is an antiseptic, right?
Right.
And the concentrations needed to be disinfectant, the dwell time is so long. And so I think what our team members think they're doing by flushing with alcohol and stuff like that is actually a poor practice, because if you flush, whether it's with critical water, alcohol, whatever, if you find something, you need to send that item, the whole tray, back to decon.
Well,
so
yes, and I agree with that, because if something is dirty and you're using alcohol is a fixative. So now,
great point.
And
that is a great point.
So if it dries on there in the process, because we know how fast alcohol does dry, now you're going to have a harder time cleaning with it.
And you know, so think about what not every hospital, but the majority of facilities that Jameed and I go and assess and do audits for, we will find alcohol on the assembly table. Now, this is alcohol for the clean side, right? Why are we trying to wipe instruments off on the clean side? If we inspect them and there's any bioburden of any kind on the instrument, the whole tray goes back. But they want to use brushes on the clean side. Bad practice. Another debate for another day I'd love to have. But the alcohol is kind of used the same way, right? They want to get it cleaner, shinier looking. They want it to look better when they put it in the tray. And technicians are trying to do a good thing. They really want to present the tray in a good form and to look good when the scrub tech or circulator opens this tray. But what damage are we doing to the instrument? Your point about fixative is right on the money.
Well, I need to tell you, you know, putting alcohol or water into an instrument happens from long time ago when gravity sterilization was used. I mean, that was your main use and all that. So you had to have a little bit of moisture in there to help with the sterilization process. But you know what? You got to follow the standards. You've got to go back to Amy. And what does Amy tell you? Amy's going to point you to the manufacturer. So what does the manufacturer tell you how to clean and assemble that instrument? You won't find them saying using alcohol on any of their products as a form to get a tray ready for assembly. It's just.
I agree. The big thing is, so I did exhaustive search because some people, they really want to challenge you on stopping using alcohol. Mm-hmm. And what my conclusion is it's not that alcohol is contraindicated in a lot of IFUs, and some courts do say wipe down with alcohol, but then you still have to do a final rinse. So that sounds like something that needs to be done on another side. But the key thing is, from a budgetary perspective and with the increased use of alcohol during COVID-19, yes, you are going through gallons and gallons of alcohol that is not doing what you're thinking that it's doing.
Exactly.
Right? So that's really where I try to convince them that it's not that you're doing anything illegal or wrong with the alcohol, but you're costing the department money because alcohol is expensive.
Yeah, it's definitely a commodity that is sought after, you know, and it needs to be reserved for things that it's used for, like for high-level disinfection for endoscopes and things along those lines.
Yes, exactly.
You know, so, you know, mainly what you find out, the good part maybe of alcohol, especially on the assembly side, is when you're taping an instrument, if people still practice that right before you
Yes,
put the tape on.
that would be an indicated use. Yes.
Yes, definitely
That's
an
good.
indicated use.
Good.
But to wipe down countertops and places where there has been some sort of a blood spill, that people tend to use that on a table if they have bioburden, it's not getting it, it's not cutting it.
And it's actually less effective than the other products that you have available, because the other products have a higher kill rate, and it has, if you, and you just go back to your central service manual, alcohol as a disinfectant is a low or medium level disinfectant. And what you're using as an environmental disinfectant from your canisters is a much better product than the alcohol.
Okay.
And actually, per use, it's probably cheaper than what you're using the alcohol.
Oh, definitely, because because they're mixed with other compounds that are in there that renders them to be a quat or whatever, which helps them for their environmental cleaners. And so therefore they're used in the correct way that way. But for us to be able to use it just for cleaning out instruments or making sure that they're rinsed on the inside or whatever, no, not today. That's an old myth that needs to be put to sleep.
So the issue is, right, we can't, when we make recommendations, if we take something away because of the practice change, we have to replace it with something temporarily until the technicians get to a level that they're not using anything solution-wise that's not approved by the manufacturer to shoot down a lumen or wipe things off to get them shiny, right? So if it's a practice change and we take the alcohol away, right? There was a situation in one hospital that I taught at, we took the alcohol away. A vendor came in and had like water that you can buy from the store, but it had his name on it, right? And so it was really cute, and he meant well. It was like a gift, right? So here's some water for your management team or whatever with his name on it. The next week when I came back, that bottle of water with the man's name on it was out in assembly, and they were using it to flush lumens, and why couldn't they? Thought it was a new product. So they're going to use something. SPD technicians, we're going to do something. This has been our practice for umpteen years. You're telling me to take it away. I feel like I'm missing something if I don't wipe this instrument down with something. What are we going to replace it with?
Well, if you go back to the standards, and I know that that's an old cliche, but it's still very appropriate for today. A lot of Amy will tell you, or even the companies themselves with the instruments, do not put anything in there. Use air to blow something out on the clean side. Use a non-linting pipe cleaner to go in there to see if there's anything there. Those are the things that we need to be pointed to instead of adding moisture to something, or like I'm saying, if it's something that's contaminated and you're throwing alcohol down there, we're having a fixative problem. So you need to go back and start using the air that's recommended by Amy. You need to be using whatever chemicals that are allowed by the manufacturer. There are some lumens that some manufacturers will say use 3% hydrogen peroxide because the instrument is so convoluted that it may have blood in there, and there's where you see whether it bubbles out or not. But that goes back to following a manufacturer's protocol, but air is probably your best bet in pipe cleaners, as opposed to any type of water. And if you were going to be using water, it sure wouldn't be Jimmy Joe's water. It would have to have been, and that should be happening anyways in the decontam side where you're using pure water.
That's right.
To rinse something else out of it.
So this is, specifically the clean side. So Jamid, if we're using stuff and wiping things out, flushing lumens, because it don't say flush lumens, right? Is it on the clean side? Like where specifically, how we get the gray area, right? things are meant for decontam. Sometimes Amy is not understood the standard. They mix it, decontam practices with assembly and preparation packaging practices, but it is coming back to what's the science of sterilization? Are we continual learners? Are we updating each other and our department to ownership of the current practice and then practicing that skill?
I agree. Like Donna made some great suggestions, and probably one of the easiest things, because like Angie said before Donna spoke, some of our more seasoned techs are just, that's their crutch. But I've had people using alcohol in a facility that has critical water. And so what I'll do is get the critical water piped into a little spigot, so that if you have to have something, that's what you refuse to believe that you can't do it, then that's a thing that costs much less money than having that alcohol. But again, it's training. And when you're talking to someone like Donna and Angie, you're getting the best of the best. And really, we just have to help assure our team that it's okay to send a tray back to decon. I think that's what it gets down to. Like, I just because you 90% finish the tray and then you find something, guess what? Send the whole tray back to decon. It's not going to count against your productivity, but more importantly, for the patient that's going to receive that, they need a full cleaning, manual and mechanical cleaning of those instruments, not an alcohol flush.
Exactly, and you're right on that. It holds each other accountable for it. So
that's right.
And if you're holding each other accountable as team members, then that's going to work a lot better. The next time something happens like that, you're just cluing somebody in that here's a problem area.
Hey, make sure you flush it. And if you have that quality culture, it's not a fight. It's not a fight. Hey, I'm sending this back. Everything looks good, but the suctions, they have a lot of stuff on them. Make sure you flush the suctions when you do this, because maybe it's a tray that they're not used to decontaminating. But when you have that quality culture, you can have those conversations without it becoming aha, I caught you thing. It's more of like, hey, make sure you catch this, or this cannulated item is really hard to do. So make sure you flush it, and make sure you use the air on the dirty side, the medical air, the instrument air on the dirty side, instead of just relying on people using alcohol on the clean side.
Or the flexible brushes to go down to aluminum. Yeah,
oh, definitely. And the correct sizes for those. That's the other important thing.
We're talking about a lot of times you see that alcohol flushing because they go, well, we don't have brushes that's small enough to get down to these small BMT suctions. Well, I have some news for you, and for us leaders, they make brushes small enough to get down to those. So we just have to make sure we have all the products, not the products that were there when we took over as managers, or the products that we've been ordering for years. We have to make sure we have all the products to make sure that our team is not taking shortcuts, because at the end of the day, alcohol flushing on the clean side is a shortcut. And if we're honest about it, it's probably because we don't have all the materials they need to feel confident that the items are clean when they get to the clean side.
The right and correct sizes. So Jamid, if there's a manager or leader out there, or even a supervisor or technician that would like to know what size brush goes down, can they email you for the company to get that?
Email me. I'll put you in contact with some of our business contacts and the reps that are in your area. The biggest thing is, I don't care where you are, and I say this from running SPDs myself, you don't have enough brushes. You don't have all the sizes of brushes. And some of them are going to move slow, but you would rather have them when you need them than you can't order it when you need them. You can't go, hey, Johnny, can you bring in the brushes that go down to 3 French? You can't. So either you have it or you don't have it.
And it's worth somebody taking an inventory back there to see what you have on a continuous basis, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
so
right.
if we put, I'm sorry, but if we put distilled water on the assembly table, critical water in a little basin, that needs to be labeled, right? That needs to be labeled. It needs to be disposed of every shift, or every tray, or however your policy and procedure for your facility says. Can't
That's a good
live
point.
there forever.
No, it better not be there over 24 hours for sure. That's,
No,
but
no.
yeah.
And then the other thing about alcohol, and it brings you into another compliance risk, because if you have alcohol, you have to match your facility's policy. So it needs to be labeled either when it was opened or when it will expire, and it needs to match the rest of the hospital. So now you've just brought another compliance issue into your thing, and it needs to be stored in a flammable cabinet.
Right.
So when you start going down that list, you're like, is it worth the risk, because it's not doing what we think it's doing? So yeah.
Yeah, you're correct on that, especially with all that information. And I've seen where the Joint Commission would rather have everything that's on the bottle of alcohol put on the container that you're putting it in. And you're right, it's a lot of work.
Wow, yeah, that's true. That's true. And then you have to know which IFUs say you can use alcohol, which ones say you don't, and then you have to do a final rinse after you do your alcohol flush.
And that's where people do not. That's where you fail a lot.
It's just adding a step that's a shortcut that actually turns out to be a long cut as far as compliance, because I've had some courts that we were using alcohol on because that was the old tradition. And so when we sent them back to the company, we were like, hey, you guys are using alcohol. Like, how do you know? They're like, because it's tearing up the cord. So
yeah, they know that. That's right. It's drying out the cords.
Right, definitely, because it's any plastics. It's horrible. It dries up things.
Right. So you're flushing all your small drill bit attachments from a TPS, and then you're putting it right in that plastic tray. You're like, why don't these plastic trays last a long time?
Right.
Because you just introduced alcohol into the STERRAD if you're putting it in a STERRAD, or the steam if you're putting it in a steam. So, you don't have studies to say how H2O2 interacts with alcohol, because, yeah, STERRAD is validated, but it wasn't with an alcohol residue on it.